Did you watch the Oscars last night?
They were last night? Oh, man.
You missed it again.
At 83, Harrison Ford's legendary career may be ending in the worst way possible. His wife, Calista, was spotted leaving their house with packed bags last week. Ford recently spent weeks preparing for a role by talking to Michael J. Fox about living with Parkinson's. But sources say this wasn't just about acting. Ford has been having strange episodes. He's forgetting lines. His hands shake during interviews. Calista has been his rock for over 20 years, but now she's making impossible choices. What she told close friends will break your heart. Harrison Ford was born on July 13, 1942, in a hospital in Chicago while World War II was still raging. His father, John William Ford, who liked to call himself Christopher, had tried to become an actor but gave up and took a job in advertising when money got tight. His mother, Dorothy, had also worked in radio as an actress, but her career didn't go anywhere either. They came from different backgrounds. His dad was Irish Catholic and his mom was Russian Jewish, but they didn't push religion on the kids. Ford later said they were raised more as liberals than anything else. By 1945, the family had another son, Terrence, and they were barely making ends meet. Harrison watched his father come home from work, complaining bitterly about his bosses. Those dinner table rants stuck with him. He decided early on that he never wanted a life in an office. He wanted something different, something free. When he started school in the 1950s, he didn't do well at all. Teachers called him lazy, but the truth was, he had undiagnosed dyslexia. Reading was hard. Writing was hard. Everything at school felt like a struggle. He was smart, but no one could see it. Other kids picked on him, thinking he was just awkward or nerdy. Ford kept to himself. He started spending time with model trains and technical gadgets. He found comfort in building things with his hands. The one place he felt seen was in the school's radio station. He became the first voice ever broadcast there, and even worked as a sportscaster during his final year. But the loneliness never left him. He once thought seriously about becoming a forest ranger or a coal miner. Any job where he didn't have to be around people. That's how deeply school had hurt him. In 1960, he went to Ripon College in Wisconsin. He studied philosophy and joined a fraternity, but school didn't go any better there either. For 3 years, he avoided anything to do with performing or standing in front of people. But in 1964, during his last few months at Ripon, he made a desperate decision. He signed up for a drama class, not because he loved acting, but because he wanted to stop being afraid of talking in public. That decision changed his life. Acting lit something inside him. He suddenly felt like he'd found something that fit. But instead of helping his grades, it distracted him. He spent more time in the theater than in the classroom. Then, just days before graduation, he was caught plagiarizing and got expelled. His parents were shocked, but Harrison didn't feel shame. He felt free. Right after that, he joined a summer theater group called the Belfry Players. That was in 1964, the same year everything would start to change. But not everything went smoothly. Back when he was just 10 years old in 1952, he had nearly drowned in a swimming accident. He never talked much about it, but that fear stayed with him. For years, he refused to do swimming scenes in movies. He even learned to fly planes and helicopters before ever feeling comfortable in water. But one day, during the filming of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, he actually taught his young co-star how to swim. He didn't want anyone else to feel the fear he had lived with for so long. By the early 1960s, he was already working any job he could find to help support his family. He cooked on a yacht. He worked as a bellhop. When he moved to Los Angeles in 1964, he got a tiny part in a film called Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round. It was a small role, but he had actually worked as a real bellhop before, so it felt strangely full circle. In one argument with a producer, Ford said something bold. If Tony Curtis could make grocery delivery look like acting, then he could make bellhopping look like performance. That confidence would one day make him a star. That same year, in June 1964, Ford married Mary Marquardt, a woman he had met in college. She believed in him when he didn't believe in himself. Even after a terrible performance in a college play, where he froze on stage, she kept pushing him to keep going. They had no money, no jobs, and no honeymoon. They packed their bags and drove to Los Angeles with just $300. Mary worked multiple jobs to keep them afloat, while Ford auditioned, failed, and tried again. He got a contract with Columbia Pictures in 1964, that paid $150 a week. It sounded like a dream, but it quickly became a nightmare. Studio bosses told him he'd never make it. They said his name was too fancy, his acting too wooden, and his presence too boring. One even told him to cut his hair like Elvis and change his entire look. He refused. After just 18 months, they dropped him. He was crushed. By 1970, he had stopped trying to act full-time. He taught himself carpentry using books from the library. He built a recording studio for a Brazilian musician named Sergio Mendes, even though he had no idea how to do it. He stood on the roof with a carpentry book in his hand, figuring it out as he went. But Mendes liked his attitude and told others. Soon, Ford was getting carpentry jobs with big names: Francis Ford Coppola, Joan Didion, Richard Dreyfuss. These jobs kept his family alive. In September 1967, his first son Benjamin was born, but they were still broke. Ford wasn't getting acting jobs. He auditioned for The Graduate and got rejected. He worked 12-hour days building furniture and fixing homes. Mary worked too. Their small apartment was crammed with worry. Ford later said that becoming a father changed everything. Now, every rejection hurt more because it wasn't just his dream anymore. His whole family depended on it. Then, in 1973, he got a small role in American Graffiti for just $500. It nearly slipped away over a silly complaint. He was accused of eating too much from the craft services table, but that little film became a hit. Ford had actually asked for $15 more per week during filming, just to make up for lost carpentry wages. That bold ask stuck in George Lucas's mind. Later, in 1975, Ford was working at Coppola's studio, building cabinets. Lucas was holding auditions for a space film called Star Wars and needed someone to read lines with the actors. Coppola suggested Ford. Lucas remembered him from before. That casual reading session led to Ford being cast as Han Solo. His carpentry was still part of his life. He built cabinets for producers, stayed close to writers like Joan Didion, and even worked for the producer of The Doors. His reputation was all about showing up on time, doing the work right, and not complaining. It made people trust him. That trust got him in the door again and again. But just as his career was rising, his personal life fell apart. He had met screenwriter Melissa Matheson on the set of Apocalypse Now in 1976, while still married to Mary. Rumors started spreading. In 1979, he and Mary divorced. It wasn't pretty. Years later, his divorce from Melissa in 2004 became one of the most expensive in Hollywood, costing between $85 million and $118 million since there was no prenup. He had once auditioned for The Godfather in 1971, but didn't get the part. It crushed him at the time, but in the end, it pushed him toward George Lucas and Star Wars, which changed his life forever. Even after becoming a star, Ford kept building things. Photos from 1984 show him working in his Beverly Hills workshop. He once said that an architect he worked with used to tell him, "No limit for better." That stuck with him. He applied it to his acting too. Every role, every scene, every moment, he wanted to make it better. Harrison Ford never meant to become Han Solo. In 1977, he was only hired to help other actors read lines during Star Wars auditions. He wasn't even trying out for a part, but something happened. When he read the lines, George Lucas saw something special in him. He gave Ford the role of Han Solo, and that decision changed everything. Star Wars became a global hit and turned Ford into a superstar overnight. One of the most unforgettable moments in Star Wars history came from Ford's own mind. In The Empire Strikes Back, when Princess Leia says, "I love you," the script had Han Solo replying, "I love you too." But Ford didn't think that felt right. In the middle of filming, he just said, "I know." That short line became one of the most iconic in movie history. It was bold, it was cool, and it came from Harrison Ford himself. But not everything behind the scenes was fun. During the 1976 filming, Ford had a secret affair with Carrie Fisher. She was only 19, he was 33, and married with 2 kids. It started at George Lucas's birthday party when Ford helped Fisher get away from some crew members who were pressuring her to drink. They sat in his car. That's where they kissed for the first time. During filming, they were Han and Leia in front of the camera, and Carrie and Harrison behind the scenes. The affair stayed hidden for nearly 40 years, until Fisher revealed it in her 2016 book. Ford never really talked about it. He said he knew she was going to write about it, but he didn't read the book. After Star Wars made him famous, Ford jumped into action movies right away. In 1978, he starred in Force 10 from Navarone, a World War II film. It was a sequel to a popular movie from 1961, but it took 17 years to make. Ford had to carry heavy action scenes, and it became clear this was the kind of role that suited him. Even though there's no clear proof he got badly injured on that set, the movie showed the physical style that would define his career. His quick thinking and improvisation made more magic in The Empire Strikes Back. The freezing scene where Han Solo is put into carbonite was rewritten just hours before filming. The director, Irvin Kershner, worried it didn't make sense why Han was being frozen. Ford helped shape the new lines. That gave him more creative control. He wasn't just reading what was on the page anymore, he was helping write it with how he delivered it. That way of working became part of who he was as an actor. Then in 1981, while filming Raiders of the Lost Ark in Tunisia, something went terribly wrong. Almost the entire cast and crew got dysentery. Harrison Ford was so sick he couldn't stand for long. He said he felt like dying. There was a huge fight scene planned between Indiana Jones and a swordsman, but Ford was too weak to do it. So instead, he pulled out his gun and shot the guy. The director loved it and kept it in the movie. That short scene became legendary. Spielberg stayed healthy only because he brought his own food and water. John Rhys Davies later said the stories were true. He even had an accident in his costume while filming. 3 years later, in 1984, things got even worse. While filming Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in Sri Lanka, Ford injured his back riding elephants and doing tough stunts. The pain was unbearable. He flew back to the US for emergency spine surgery. Doctors had to remove pieces of his damaged discs. Lucas said Ford could barely stand, but still kept trying to work. After that, stunt doubles handled more of the dangerous scenes, but Ford still pushed himself harder than most actors. In 1983, he married screenwriter Melissa Matheson. She had written E.T. They had 2 children, a son in 1987 and a daughter in 1990. Their marriage brought calm into Ford's hectic life. In 1985, he starred in Witness, playing a detective hiding in an Amish village. It was different from his action roles. It earned him his first and only Oscar nomination, but he couldn't even attend the ceremony. He was on a boat in Belize filming The Mosquito Coast. He watched the Oscars from there and later said, "It felt like it never really happened." That year, Witness was nominated for 8 Oscars. It proved Ford wasn't just an action star, he could do serious drama too. But The Mosquito Coast, filmed in 1986, wasn't easy. Ford took the role very seriously. He acted so deeply into the part that people on set said he started to seem unhinged. The filming took place deep in the jungle. It was hot, wild, and remote. Sometimes they were still shooting at 1:45 in the morning. While setting up shots, the crew accidentally found a Mayan site that had never been recorded. They used it to mount their camera. The location was tough, and Ford's perfectionism slowed things down, but the film turned out powerful. Then came 1989. And Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade became the perfect ending to his action-packed decade. Ford starred alongside Sean Connery, who played his father. The chemistry between them lit up the screen. Spielberg later said it was the most fun he ever had filming with actors. That same year, Ford also started flying planes. In 1999, he had his first major crash while practicing emergency landings. The helicopter went down near Lake Piru, but he and the instructor survived. The crashes didn't stop him. He had more incidents in 2000, 2015, 2017, and 2020, but he always returned to flying. And in 1990, he attended Connery's 60th birthday, showing the friendship they built while filming was real. Harrison Ford didn't just act brave on screen, he really put his life on the line. While filming The Fugitive in 1993, there was a scene where his character jumps off a massive dam. It looks impossible, and the truth is, it nearly was. The team used 6 dummies for the actual jump, and each one cost $12,000. They were so badly damaged during the shoot that the owner of the dummies was furious. But even with all that effort, Ford wasn't satisfied with just camera tricks. He insisted on standing right at the edge of the real dam, only held back by a wire. That dam was hundreds of feet high, and the freezing water below was just 40 degrees. Navy SEALs were brought in as advisors, and they warned that if anyone actually fell into that water, they'd have only a 1 in a million chance of making it out alive. But Ford still got in the water. Twice, he filmed those cold, dangerous takes himself. The entire scene cost around $2 million, but it paid off. The movie made $183 million around the world. And a big part of that was thanks to Ford's real-life fearlessness. 4 years later, in 1997, Ford was 55 years old and still doing things most younger actors wouldn't dare try. In Air Force One, he played the President of the United States, but he didn't act like a politician. He fought terrorists with his own hands, jumped through fire, and survived mid-air disasters at 15,000 feet. The plane gets hit by enemy jets. It loses fuel. It crashes into the Caspian Sea. And through all of that, Ford kept doing his own stunts. He threw punches, took hits, and crawled through the wreckage like a man half his age. The movie became one of the biggest hits of the year, earning $315.2 million and finishing as the fifth highest-grossing film of 1997. It was nominated for 2 Oscars. And while Titanic took those awards, Air Force One proved Ford still had everything it took to be an action hero, even in his 50s. But Ford didn't just impress with action. In Patriot Games, which came out in 1992, he played Jack Ryan, a former CIA analyst caught in a deadly game with terrorists. To prepare for the role, Ford was actually invited into real CIA facilities. He walked through secret rooms most people will never see. Analysts working there even asked for his autograph. The director later said the CIA only helped because the movie didn't show any of their most controversial secrets. Still, when Ford visited, security lights suddenly flashed, and all the deep cover agents vanished into hidden rooms. It was that serious. But behind the scenes, there was a problem. The author of the original book, Tom Clancy, didn't want Ford in the role. He thought Ford was too old. At the time, Ford was 49, and Clancy had imagined Jack Ryan as a younger man. He also hated some of the script changes, but when he finally saw the finished movie, Clancy changed his mind. He said it worked, and it did. The film premiered on June 5, 1992, became #1 at the box office for 2 weeks, and made $178.1 million worldwide. In 2002, Harrison Ford took a big risk with a movie called K-19, The Widowmaker. It was a submarine thriller that cost around $100 million to make. But when it hit theaters, it flopped hard, making only about $65 million worldwide. It wasn't just a box office disaster. Around the same time, his personal life was also falling apart. In 2004, his divorce from screenwriter Melissa Matheson became one of the most expensive in Hollywood history. Because they didn't have a prenup, Ford had to pay her $85 million. She didn't just get a share of what they already had, she also got a cut of his future earnings from huge movies like Air Force One, The Fugitive, and Indiana Jones. He paid her $18.5 million in cash by 2006, and kept sharing royalties that added up to at least $30 million more. Then, in 2008, Ford tried to bring back one of his most famous roles, Indiana Jones. He was 65 when The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out. The movie made over $790 million, but people didn't focus on the box office. Instead, they mocked his age. Some said he was too old to play an action hero. Ford later said that people were too focused on what they thought Indiana Jones should be instead of enjoying the story. The film opened strong in its first weekend with $100 million, but the constant jokes about Ford being too old stayed with him. He admitted the movie didn't do as well as they had hoped. In 2011, things didn't get any easier. Ford starred in Cowboys and Aliens, a strange mix of science fiction and Western. It cost a lot, $163 million, but didn't make enough to count as a success. It brought in just $174 million worldwide and ended up losing around $80 million. Ford was trying to prove he could still carry a blockbuster, but the movie didn't connect with people. A lot of blame was placed on the strange genre and also on Daniel Craig, who hadn't done well in movies outside of James Bond. In 2015, something terrifying happened. On March 5th, Ford was flying a vintage World War II plane when the engine failed right after takeoff. He was 72 years old. He could have crashed into homes or streets, but instead, he aimed for a golf course. He clipped a tree and smashed into the ground. His pelvis and ankle were broken. His head was badly cut. A doctor playing golf rushed over and helped pull him from the wreckage. People called him a hero because his quick thinking may have saved lives. He needed surgery and metal plates to recover. Just a few months later, he went right back to flying. That same year, something else almost killed him. While filming The Force Awakens, Ford was standing in the doorway of the Millennium Falcon when someone pressed the wrong button. A heavy hydraulic door slammed down, smashing his leg and throwing him onto the ground. He was 73 and had to get surgery again, this time for broken bones in his leg. Production was shut down for weeks. Ford said he didn't want to know who hit the button. It was an eerie twist, since both Han Solo and Ford were hurt by the same ship. Ford's past had its own storms. He married his college sweetheart, Mary Marquardt, in 1964. They had 2 sons, Benjamin in 1966 and Willard in 1969. But when he got cast in Star Wars at age 33, everything changed. In 1976, during filming, he started a hidden affair with 19-year-old Carrie Fisher. She hoped he'd leave his wife. The affair lasted 3 months, but stayed secret for nearly 40 years until Fisher shared it in 2016. By 1979, Ford's marriage ended, and he was dealing with fame and guilt at the same time. His second marriage also came with heartbreak. In 1983, he married Melissa Matheson, who had already written E.T. and the Black Stallion. They had a son, Malcolm, in 1987, and a daughter, Georgia, in 1990. They were private and seemed stable, but in 2000, they separated quietly. Ford moved out of their Manhattan home. In 2004, the divorce was finalized and became one of the most costly splits in showbiz. Matheson died in 2015, just over a decade after the divorce. But in 2002, Ford's life took a softer turn. At the Golden Globes, actress Calista Flockhart accidentally spilled wine on him. That moment sparked a love story that still continues. He was 59, she was 37. People talked a lot about the 22-year age gap, wondering if the relationship was real or just for publicity. But they adopted her son, Liam, together, and Ford said in 2003 that he was truly in love. On Valentine's Day weekend in 2009, he proposed. They got married in 2010 while he was filming Cowboys and Aliens in Santa Fe. The plane crash in 2015 didn't just bring pain, it also brought his family closer. Ford was in the hospital for nearly a month, and his wife Calista was there every day. His son Ben shared updates online before deleting them. Ford had been an absent father for many years, especially during the 70s and 80s when his career exploded. He admitted in interviews that he wished he had been around more. His older sons, born in the 60s, saw less of him than Liam, who he raised in his late 60s. In 2010, Ford said he was probably a better dad the second time around. In 2023, he told Esquire he would still take a bullet for any of his children, but flying remained part of him. In 2020, at age 77, Ford made a dangerous mistake. He crossed a runway at Hawthorne Airport while another plane was landing. The 2 planes came within just 3,600 feet of each other. Ford apologized right away over the radio, admitting he misunderstood the instructions. The FAA opened an investigation. Just 3 years earlier, in 2017, he had also landed on the wrong strip, nearly hitting a passenger jet. In 2021, while filming Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Ford got injured again. He was 78 and rehearsing a fight scene at Pinewood Studios in London when he hurt his shoulder badly. Production was delayed for weeks. It reminded everyone of his 2014 injury when the Millennium Falcon door crushed his leg. Despite everything, Ford pushed through and finished his final Indiana Jones film. In March 2025, just days before the Oscars, Ford fell ill with shingles. He was 82 and had to pull out of presenting at the ceremony. The pain was intense, and the virus was dangerous at his age. People were worried, but he stayed home to recover. Only weeks earlier, he had gone viral for eating a cracker during a co-star's speech at an award show, showing his usual carefree charm. At 83, Ford finally got something he had never received before. He was nominated for an Emmy for his role in the Apple TV Plus series Shrinking. He played Dr. Paul Rhodes, a therapist with early-stage Parkinson's. His performance was praised for its honesty and heart. He talked to Michael J. Fox to prepare for the role, making it even more real. One scene showed his character quietly wondering how much time he had left to work. The show was nominated in 7 categories. For the first time, Ford was competing not just in movies, but also in the world of television. And he wasn't just holding on, he was shining.